Hi, Colin Davis, ShadowTechAlchemy.com. So I'm going to talk today. I'm going to give you some tips, and I'm focusing this on spiritual outsiders, and maybe that's kind of probably a term that describes the people who probably would generally listen to me in the first place. So this is people who are they're naturally, they feel alienated from mainstream society, from the matrix, so to speak. They don't feel like matrix values or mainstream values really fit with them. And they recognize that the whole mainstream paradigm is a trap. And I talked about this in the last video, the whole idea, go to college, get your degree, get a good job for a company or work for the government or whatever, and buy your car and your house and just the whole thing. And the whole standard paradigm, and everything is about debt, because all of these steps take money, and you don't have that money, so you have to borrow that money. So you're just trapped in payments, and then you're just having to work all the time so that you can make the payments. And you see that, and you're like, you don't want that. You don't want that. That's not your value system. That looks like a trap to you. You need a lot more time and space to think, to develop yourself, to spend time in nature, to work on your creative pursuits. And so that whole thing is just not looking attractive. And so that's my situation. I'm an artist outsider and a spiritual artist outsider, and that's my situation. I'm now been kind of surviving and thriving, let's say, outside the matrix or on the edge of the matrix for a long time, for decades now. And sometimes it's been very difficult, but it's also been very fulfilling. And so I was going to give you some ideas today about, kind of tell you how I've been doing it and just give people some ideas. Now, with that said, I notice that when I get into the mode of giving advice, I kind of step into this kind of patriarchal or fatherly kind of role, and I don't want to deliver that way. You should do this and you shouldn't do that. And I do have some feelings about certain things that you should or shouldn't do, right? Like eating well, or reading and not spending too much time online, and being in relationships with people instead of online relationships. So some of these things are things that I think I feel strongly about. But at the same time, I don't want to tell you what to do. I can't tell you what to do. I can just tell you what I've been doing and my personal opinion, and you can kind of take it or leave it or work it out for yourself. And so, but I do have some things that I wrote down, and I could probably make a much longer list, but here we go. So the first thing is to really take a look at how much time you're spending online. And I know you've heard this all kinds of other places and stuff, but this is in the list. And how much time we're spending online. It's one thing to use the internet to find information because you're studying, you're researching, you're developing yourself in a certain direction. You want to see what other people's perspectives are. You want to get some feedback about something, or you need to learn something. That's one thing. Or even, to get on social media so that you can share your creativity. You're a painter or some other kind of artist, and you want to share that. Okay, that's fine. And or you feel alienated from society and you don't really know anybody around you that kind of has your values, but you do know people online, right? And so I understand that, but I also want to just say that the whole online thing, we've been doing it long enough now, and the people who are old enough to have gone, lived in both worlds, can see very, very clearly that it's how destructive it can be, and how it can retard your development. And I'm finding that people, especially millennials and Gen Z, but all kinds of people are really opting for online relationships. And then when you you try to get into deeper relationships with them, they resist it, and so they're afraid. They're afraid of being in deeper relationships with people because relationships are difficult. But you can't evolve without real relationships, and you retard your growth and you lock yourself back. And so if you I can tell you that I can't just find other people like me around here in this neighborhood, right? To find other people that are like me, I kind of need to go online, and I know you probably feel the same way. But when I finally click with people, then I want to call them on the phone, right? Then I want to make voice messages with them and go back and forth with voice, or call them on the phone, or have them go on to Zoom calls with me and stuff like that. Or I want to visit them physically. I want to plan a little vacation and I want to go visit those people. So I want to bring those people into my life and become more intimate with those people. To develop yourself psychospiritually, that is synonymous with intimacy. And the more intimate you can get with people, then the more you develop, the more they develop. You also run into conflicts that way. The deeper you get with people, the more you're able to trigger them, and their sensitivities rub on yours and stuff, and now you have conflict, and then you have to work yourself through the conflict. And so that's how you really evolve, is through conflict. And so you might develop yourself to a certain level alone, and then you're tested in relationship. And then you go back to being alone, and you're tested in relationship. So really, you have to be, we are human beings, we're built on this whole primate structure. You have to be in physical relationship with people. And it's better to even have one person who's at your level that you can be intimate. And when I say intimate, I don't necessarily mean have a sexual relationship with them. I mean, intimate means you really know them at a deep level. They become like family to you. And so, so that is just really, really important, and it's fine to use the internet to find people or to do research and all of that, but you don't want to substitute real relationships with internet relationships, and you want to challenge other people to get more intimate with you. Get them on the phone, get them on a Zoom call or whatever kind of conference call or whatever we call this, video conferencing, whatever. Challenge other people to do that and to be their friend that way, even if they live on the other side of the planet. So it's very, very important. And then another thing that's very important to do is to travel, especially outside of your own country. Now, the Europeans are always doing this. They're always traveling. They're very used to traveling and to being in other cultures. The Americans are not. And the Americans are a lot of Americans are kind of afraid of travel. And they because it kind of bursts your bubble, once you realize that there are other societies out there that are doing things differently, that are often, not always, but often in a lot of ways better than the way it's being done in your own country, it really kind of challenges your beliefs in a lot of ways. So traveling is very, very important. It changes your whole psyche. And so traveling is important. And then you can meet other people who you've met online, and then you can get together with them while you're traveling. You can do all that at one time. So forming community, even if the spiritual outsider is not finding a whole lot of people around them to connect with, you are meeting them online, and then you can bring them closer into your life through phone calls and video calls and then physical travel. So that is very, 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 very important. I talk about intentional communities, and how are you going to be in an intentional community if you have a hard time, just relating to people in general? So there you go. I've talked about this, but yeah, just again, the whole thing of our cultural values, of like what I just said about getting a degree and getting a good job and all that kind of stuff. Those are all in your superego, and those are all putting pressure on you. And so you have to be able to tolerate other people's negative gaze. You know, when you're doing something totally different and your family or friends or peer group or other people in society are not understanding you, you have to be able to tolerate that. When I had my car towed. This is, how long ago is this now? This is like 15 years ago or 17 or something. Had my car towed once, and I decided not to get it back. I just got myself a bicycle, and I put a bike rack on the back, and I would ride my bicycle to the grocery store or to the farmer's market, and I just did that for like 4 years. That was before Melissa came in. And then when Melissa came in, she had a car, and so we started sharing her car. But for like 4 years, I didn't even have a car. And then I would just, and so, and people would be like, look at this guy, what? Because I used to have nice cars and stuff like that. And people were like, what the hell are you doing, bro? You're riding a bicycle now? I mean, come on, get a car, get real. And I'm like, no, I don't need that. I don't need the payment. I don't need the hassle. I don't need the maintenance. I like the amount of time that it takes to get to a place. I like getting the fresh air. I like being, the car is like a little box, and you're just trapped in this little box, and everybody's just kind of fighting with each other from inside their own little metal boxes. And it's like that whole paradigm just is stupid. And the way America is built, now Europe is different. And a lot of people in Europe don't even have cars. But yeah, so that, or the mortgage payment, and then, the way the houses are built and everything's constantly breaking all the time, and you got to get this loan for 20, 30 years, and you're paying $500,000 or $800,000 by the time the loan is paid off, for just to put a roof over your head. That's just ridiculous. And so examining these built-in standards that we're supposed to abide by, and when you look at each of them, you realize, okay, that might have worked at a certain time. In the 1950s, when dad could go to work, at a sales job or whatever, and work at Sears or whatever, and he could come home, and they could afford a house and a car and go on vacation and all that, and mom could raise the kids at home. When that was possible, okay, fine. The whole thing's changed now. Everything's completely inflated now. The purchasing power of the dollar or the euro or whatever has gone way down. And so you're going to have to go join the matrix and run around like a chicken with your head cut off just to pay for a basic vehicle and a roof over your head. And it just seems ridiculous. So what I'm saying is, we have to really, really question all of these things and then work out creative ways of getting the same result in a different manner. So for example, I'm an audio engineer, I'm a musician. I needed a studio, I needed a band practice space, and I needed a place to live. So I rented a roll-up door warehouse in a light industrial area in California, in the Bay Area, and I put all those things there. I built that out. I put those things in there. I lived in that place. I rented some of the space out to some other people. I got my bills down to $800 a month. I took one location and turned it into what I would normally have to have 3 locations for, right? And then I just, even though I lived in this industrial area and it wasn't that pretty or anything, I didn't have a lawn or a backyard or anything, I'm 10, 15 minutes away from amazing nature spots. And so I would just ride over there. I either ride my bike or drive my car over there. And so I'm always spending time in nature spots. I got my overhead way low. I'm running my business out of there, and I'm good to go. And it's not that there weren't ups and downs and difficulties and all that. There were, but it was a creative way to get my needs met without having to sell my soul to the matrix. And so examining these things, examining the idea of the car, of the home, of the credit card, of the debt payment, and all that kind of stuff, and really doing everything you can to keep your overhead as low as you can, That's how you can live on the outside or on the edge of the matrix. The more debt you're in, the more obligations to the matrix that you have, the closer you're sucked into the machine. So you got to throw away those cultural beliefs that are locking you in there, get creative, come up with a plan that, and you might have to try different things, that works for you, that gets your needs met without, outside the standard model. So that's what I would say on that. Eating well, did I talk about that yet? I haven't talked about that. You know why? Because I recorded this video already and I didn't like it, and so I'm re-recording it, and I can't remember what I already talked about. But it's very easy to eat well. It's very easy to eat well. Melissa, I was already eating pretty good before Melissa, but Melissa taught me how to eat really well. She worked for Whole Foods for 24 years. She was totally into all kinds of natural foods, and she knew all kinds of stuff about supplements and all that kind of stuff. I don't mess with supplements. I take vitamin D, zinc, vitamin C. When I get a cold, I take those, and oregano oil, which is really, really powerful. That will kill colds. But it's about it. Maybe protein powder or something like that. But I eat really, really good. Really, really good. And it's so easy. I just get my produce. You can get it. Mainstream grocery stores in America even now sell good produce most of the time. Whether it's the organic or whatever, you can get good enough produce. And you might have to go to a specialty store. You might have to go to Whole Foods or some other butcher or something like that to get the meat that you want. Get really good, high quality meat and fish, whatever. And I'm not into all the diets and all that kind of stuff. I'm just eating basic common sense stuff like people have eaten for thousands of years. And I don't eat grains or carbohydrates, though. The carbs that I get are just from produce. I don't eat any grains. That is one thing. No grains and no sugar. The only sugar I eat is a little bit of honey in my tea. That's it. And what's in fruit. So I'm eating good produce. I'm eating fruit. I'm eating really high quality dairy. I'm getting like organic Greek yogurt, and I'm putting fruit in it and stuff. And I'm making salads or steamed vegetables, and I'm putting meat in there, and I'm putting seasonings in there and stuff. I'm eating, good quality eggs for breakfast and stuff. It's so easy. It's just so easy. And I just don't buy anything that has ingredients that I don't know what it is. And it's just so easy to eat good. And I never go fast food. I hardly go to restaurants. And when I go out, like for like a nature hike or something like that, I just, I have like a little insulated bag, and I put these, this cold bag, frozen cold bag in there. I put some waters in there, and I put some, peanut butter and a banana in there, and some nuts or whatever other thing that and I just, I don't go buy food when I'm out. I just, eat what I had from home. And so, yeah, so it's easy to eat really well. And then, I'm always exercising. I go to the gym, 4 or 5 times a week. And so I'm staying healthy, and it's really easy. It's no big deal. And I don't know why people it's just a lot of trauma and a lot of shadow stuff that people so unconsciously eat so badly and don't take care of their bodies. That is just such evidence of extreme trauma and intergenerational wounding. And it's really sad. Half of Americans are just obese. And that was not the case 40 years ago. I know there's a lot of parasitic people and companies that are poisoning us, but it's very easy to get around that. So eating well is easy, and we have to eat well. We have to. And so that's just very, very important. I said get creative about everything. I talked about relationships, right? Didn't I? In the beginning? Yes, I did. Live with other people, right? I think I talked about that. Reading books, right? This is kind of back to the online thing. You have to read books. If you're working on yourself, if you're serious about developing yourself, if you're just a serious person in general, you have to read books. I'm a writer, and I know that when you write, you have to really make your language very efficient, and you have to pack a lot of information in. And so everything that I'm going to say in this 30-minute video or whatever this is could be said in 2 pages or 3 pages in a book, right? And so, and the people who write books are often people who are specialists in certain areas, and they've put in a huge amount of thought into what they're writing. They're not just blabbing into the internet. And so we've got to read books. And I don't read very fast. I got vision problems, and I've never read very fast. And so I have to be very choosy about what I'm reading. But I read books, and I learn through a lot of stuff through books. You can't, obviously, it's not just about learning information and then regurgitating it or whatever. It's about getting information from another person's perspective who has a certain experience and then trying it out for yourself. So it's so important that people read books, and people are forgetting how to read. And also it helps you get your attention span back, because getting online blows out your attention span. And so when you have to go sit down and get quiet and get into book world, that brings your whole body down, it brings your whole consciousness down, and it puts you in a more focused mode. And then you have to use your mind in a way that's totally different from watching videos. And so we have to read books. It's very, very important. And if you're working on yourself, there's a lot of books, there's a lot of information that you're not going to get anywhere else. It's in books. Like if you're working on Jungian theory, if you're learning to be a Jungian, then yeah, you're going to have to read Jungian books. And so that was on my list here. And that was kind of, I think that's actually the last thing that's on my list for now. And I could go on with this list, and I know this is just a partial list, but I think that was the last thing that was on my list about the Jungian books. Spiritual outsiders, I think, are the types of people who naturally fit with Jungian psychology. And Jungian psychology is not just a psychological theory, but it is a whole system of, it's a whole worldview. It's a whole, I would say it's really, once you get deep enough into it, it is a second tier worldview. And it is incredibly holistic, and it is a spiritual paradigm. It is a spiritual paradigm of spiritual development, of spiritual growth, and a problem-solving toolkit for life that is unlike anything else that you're going to get in society. And it's got many elements that you can get from a religious perspective, but it's got many elements that you can get from a scientific perspective. And it's an alchemical perspective. And so alchemy is a scientific spiritual art. Jungian psychology is a scientific spiritual art. And for spiritual outsiders, I would highly recommend that people start getting their education in Jungian psychology. You can start with Robert Johnson if you want to. He's very easy to get into. And Owning Your Own Shadow is a book that people often start with, because really the shadow work is kind of the beginning of it all. And his books are accessible, and you can understand all the aspects of Jungian psychology by reading Robert Johnson's books, and they're small, they're thin, they're like 100 pages or less, or 100 pages around there. So and then you can go from there, and we can talk in other videos about what books and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, so Jungian psychology, I highly recommend to all spiritual outsiders. And then also integral theory and spiral dynamics. And you can kind of get around spiral dynamics because spiral dynamics is built into integral theory. And you can actually get all of integral theory through this little book. This is kind of everything you need. Integral vision. This kind of has all of Ken Wilber's ideas, no, not all of them, but it's the core ideas are in here. And the most important things I feel are the 4 quadrants model, and I talk about this in my last book, Transforming Darkness. The 4 quadrants model, where it basically shows you that there's 4 perspectives for looking at anything in the world, from the internal subjective, from the internal or cultural, intercultural we lens. You got the I lens, the we lens, the it lens, and the its lens. 4 lenses there. I'll leave that out for today. I'm not going to go into that right now. And then the stages of psychosocial evolution. And I talk a lot about second tier. And second tier is called it's integral level. It's when you get to the teal level, and in spiral dynamics, it's the yellow level. And this shows you all the stages of psychospiritual evolution of human beings over the course of time, and you can understand all the different sort of worldviews or paradigms of people in all places and all times. And then you can kind of see what they expect the next stages to be. And this is part of a whole second tier mindset. And so you can be in second tier without knowing anything about this stuff. Like Melissa. When I first met Melissa, she was already in second tier. She didn't know anything about this kind of stuff, but she was already in second tier. She was already holon jumping, as we call it. And she was just natural. The alchemical paradigm of as above, so below. You know, that which is above is like that which is below, or that which is without is like that which is within. And being able to see something on the outside and go, oh yeah, the structure of that looks like the structure of this, or the structure of this matches with the structure of that, and correlating the inner and the outer to get a holistic picture of reality. Melissa was naturally doing that already. You can go through her songs that she wrote in the 80s, and there's second tier stuff in there. So you don't have to know anything about integral theory to be in second tier, but I highly recommend people at least dabble in integral theory or spiral dynamics, and then as well as Jungian psychology. So that's kind of, I think, my kind of video for today on tips for what did I call it? Spiritual outsiders. Yeah. And there's a whole lot more I can talk about ways to, creative ways to live. I kind of told you my example today. There's so much more I can think of that I could go on about, but I kind of made a commitment that I would keep these videos short. And so that'll be all for today. ShadowTechAlchemy.com.